The Sun, a manifestation of the dark side of the Force, holds an unparalleled place in the Star Wars mythology. His dominance over Abeloth, a being of considerable chaos and corruption, can be understood through their respective origins, natures, and connections to the Force. Abeloth, often referred to as the bringer of chaos, is undeniably powerful, but her essence as a servant to the Mortis Gods, of which the Sun is an integral member, places her beneath their divine power. The very structure of Mortis and its purpose reveals the magnitude of this difference, illustrating why the Sun, should he escape Mortis, would be incomparably more formidable. The Sun represents the pure embodiment of the dark side, not just an adherent to its principles. He is the living nexus of the dark side, woven into the fabric of the Force itself. Unlike Abeloth, whose origins trace back to her transformation after consuming the font of power and bathing in the pool of knowledge, the Sun is inherently divine. Abeloth's power, though vast, is derived in unnatural amplification tied to her servitude to the Ones, the Mortis family. Her ascension comes with limitations. She is bound by the dynamics of her corruption and the inherent imbalance she creates. The Sun, however, is a primordial force, part of an eternal triumvirate designed to maintain equilibrium in the galaxy. His power is not stolen or corrupted, it is intrinsic, fundamental to the Force itself. Abeloth's dependency on the Mortis family underscores her inferiority. She was a mortal who served as the mother, a caretaker figure for the father, the Sun, and the daughter, the celestial beings representing balance, darkness, and light respectively. Her relationship with them was defined by her subservience, and her ultimate fall stemmed from attempting to bridge her mortality with their immortality. Abeloth's transformation was not a natural evolution of her being, but a grotesque attempt to grasp power far beyond her station. The Sun, on the other hand, is power incarnate. He does not seek to ascend or consume external sources to increase his strength. He is strength. He is strength. If the Sun were to escape Mortis, his potential would be unbounded. Mortis acts as a realm of containment, keeping the full might of these celestial beings confined and balanced. The father ensures that neither the Sun nor the daughter can tip the scales of the Force too drastically. However, outside Mortis, this restriction would vanish. The Sun would no longer be bound by the father's will or the metaphysical barriers of Mortis. His influence over the dark side would extend unchecked, far beyond the scope of any mortal or corrupted being like Abeloth. She, for all her chaos, required avatars and vessels to enact her will across the galaxy. The Sun would need no such intermediaries. His presence alone would warp the very fabric of the Force, plunging the galaxy into an eternal darkness. Abeloth's reliance on manipulation and fear further distinguishes her from the Sun. While she thrives on exploiting weaknesses and feeding off the pain and despair of others, the Sun operates on an entirely different plane of existence. His power is raw and overwhelming. He does not need to deceive or corrupt to assert his dominance. When he confronts Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Ahsoka Tano in Mortis, his authority is absolute. He toys with them, effortlessly bending the environment and even the Force itself to his will. Abeloth, by contrast, engages in psychological warfare, exploiting the fragility of mortal minds to establish control. While effective, this tactic underscores her dependence on the limitations of others, a stark contrast to the Sun's inherent superiority. The very existence of Mortis highlights the chasm between the Sun and Abeloth. Mortis is not just a location but a manifestation of the Force's cosmic balance. The father, the Sun, and the daughter are embodiments of this balance, their interactions dictating the ebb and flow of the Force across the galaxy. Abeloth, even in her most powerful state, remains an outsider to this divine dynamic. She is a disruption, an anomaly that the galaxy seeks to correct. The Ones, however, are the architects of this balance, their power interwoven with the very essence of the Force. This distinction is critical. While Abeloth is an aberration, the Sun is a cornerstone. The father's role in containing the Sun within Mortis also speaks to the Sun's potential for destruction. The father, an entity of unimaginable power, sees the need to hold his son in check, recognizing the catastrophic consequences of his escape. Abeloth, on the other hand, is a threat that the Jedi and Sith can, with monumental effort, confront and neutralize. The Sun exists on an entirely different level. His presence in the galaxy would render such efforts futile. His escape would not merely disrupt the balance of the force, it would obliterate it, leaving the galaxy in eternal shadow. Another aspect of the sun's superiority lies in the symbolism of the Mortis family. They are not mere beings but representations of the fundamental forces that shape the galaxy. The daughter embodies the light side, the son the dark, and the father the balance between them. Their existence is not rooted in physicality but in metaphysical reality. Abeloth, while powerful, is still bound by the limitations of her corporeal origins. Even in her ascended state, she is tied to the material world, reliant on physical manifestations to exert her will. The sun, as a being of pure dark side energy, transcends such limitations. His power is not confined to the physical realm but extends into the very fabric of existence. Furthermore, the nature of Abeloth's defeat underscores her inferiority to the Mortis Gods. She can be fought, contained, and ultimately destroyed by a combination of Jedi, Sith, and other Force-sensitive beings. The sun, however, is only restrained by the father, a being of equal divinity. When the son rebels and kills the daughter, the galaxy trembles at the implications. His power is not something that can be confronted through conventional means, it is a cosmic force that requires divine intervention to counteract. Abeloth, for all her chaos, is ultimately mortal in her vulnerabilities, a being whose power is an aberration rather than a fundamental truth. Should the sun escape Mortis, his power would dwarf that of Abeloth in every conceivable way. He would not need to rely on avatars or manipulations to extend his influence. He is the dark side, and his very presence would reshape the galaxy. Abeloth's attempts to create chaos are a pale imitation of the destruction the sun could unleash. Her origins as a servant to the Mortis family cement her status as a subordinate, a being whose power is derived from and ultimately inferior to the divine forces she once served. The sun, free of Mortis, would be the ultimate expression of the dark side's power, an entity far beyond the comprehension or resistance of any mortal force. The Mortis Gods, father, son, and daughter, are beings of cosmic significance, representing balance, darkness, and light respectively. While they appear mortal within the confines of Mortis, their mortality is an illusion shaped by the unique rules and constructs of that realm. Once free of Mortis, they would transcend such constraints, becoming truly indestructible entities whose essence is woven into the fabric of the Force itself. This distinction amplifies the gap between them and beings like Abeloth, emphasizing why the sun, in particular, would become a force utterly beyond destruction should he escape Mortis. Mortis is not a typical physical location, it exists as a metaphysical construct where the cosmic forces of the Force are given form. Within this realm, the Mortis Gods interact in ways that make their power comprehensible to mortal beings. The father, son, and daughter display certain vulnerabilities, such as their apparent deaths, but these are products of Mortis's unique rules rather than true indicators of their limits. Mortis serves as a self-contained system designed to maintain balance between light and dark, and the mortality of its inhabitants is a narrative tool within this construct. Outside Mortis, where these limitations no longer apply, the Mortis Gods would manifest their full, unrestrained power, rendering them impossible to destroy by any conventional or unconventional means. The deaths of the daughter and the father within Mortis are key examples of how their mortality is tied to that realm. These events unfold within the rules of Mortis itself, which governs how the Mortis Gods interact and can be harmed. However, their essence transcends physical death. The daughter's sacrifice, for instance, transforms her essence into the Convermorai, a being that continues to serve as an extension of her will and influence in the galaxy. This demonstrates that even when killed within Mortis, the Mortis Gods are not truly extinguished, they simply alter their form or method of expression. This continuity underscores their immortality beyond the artificial constraints of Mortis. If the sun were to leave Mortis, he would shed the illusory trappings of mortality entirely. His essence as the dark side's embodiment would become unbound, rendering him impervious to destruction. The Force itself, as a universal and infinite energy, cannot be destroyed, and as a living embodiment of its dark aspect, the sun would share this indestructibility. Abeloth, by contrast, for all her power, is ultimately tied to the material realm. She can be fought, damaged, and destroyed by Force wielders because her power, while immense, is derivative and finite. The sun's power is fundamental, an inseparable part of the Force's very existence. The nature of the Mortis Gods' containment within Mortis further highlights their indestructible potential. The father's role as the keeper of balance is not to prevent the destruction of the son and daughter, but to manage their cosmic influence. Mortis acts as a metaphysical cage, ensuring their power does not spill uncontrollably into the galaxy. This containment reflects the galaxy's inability to withstand the raw power of the Mortis Gods should they act freely. The father's death in Mortis is symbolic of this balance unraveling, not a true end to his being. Similarly, if the son escaped Mortis, the rules that limited him would collapse, making any attempt to confront or destroy him futile. Abeloth's power, while vast, is rooted in the Force nexus she corrupted and consumed. She is an interloper, a mortal who sought to seize a fragment of the divine. Her immortality is conditional, relying on avatars and manifestations that can be destroyed, forcing her essence to retreat until she can manifest again. This cycle of defeat and resurgence demonstrates that her immortality is not absolute. It is a function of her corruption, not an intrinsic quality. The Son, on the other hand, does not rely on external sources or corrupted nexuses. He is a natural embodiment of the dark side's eternal power, and his immortality, once unbound from Mortis, would be absolute. The Mortis Gods' existence beyond the material realm also separates them from other Force-wielding beings. They are not merely powerful individuals who have mastered the Force, they are the Force in its most concentrated, primal forms. Mortis serves as a focal point for their manifestations, but it does not define their existence. In this way, their apparent mortality is analogous to shadows cast on a wall. The shadows can fade, but the light that creates them endures. Abeloth, however, is tied to the wall. Her existence is inseparable from the conditions that created her. Once outside Mortis, the sun would no longer even cast a shadow. His true form, an infinite aspect of the dark side, would overwhelm any attempts to oppose him. The mythology of the Mortis Gods also reinforces their indestructible nature outside Mortis. They are not meant to be understood as mere characters within a story, but as archetypes representing eternal truths. The daughter's light, the son's darkness, and the father's balance are not forces that can be extinguished. They are constants of the galaxy's existence. Abeloth, in contrast, is a disruption of these constants, an aberration that the Force seeks to correct. Her power exists to challenge balance but not to replace it. The Sun, as part of the eternal triad of Mortis, is integral to the galaxy's very nature. His destruction would be tantamount to the destruction of the dark side itself, an impossibility given the cyclical and eternal nature of the Force. If the Mortis Gods were mortal in any conventional sense, their power would not require containment within Mortis. The father's deliberate isolation of himself, the son, and the daughter highlights the magnitude of their potential influence. Abeloth, despite her threat, does not require such measures. She is formidable but finite, capable of being countered by extraordinary Force wielders. The Mortis Gods, however, require metaphysical barriers because their power is unlimited. Should the Sun escape Mortis, there would be no mechanism, physical, spiritual, or otherwise, to contain him. His immortality would be a natural extension of his infinite nature, not reliant on external conditions or artifacts. In essence, the Mortis Gods' mortality is a narrative construct designed to function within Mortis. Outside of this realm, they transcend such limitations, becoming pure embodiments of their respective aspects of the Force. The Sun, freed from Mortis, would embody the dark side in its truest, most indestructible form. Abeloth, for all her chaos and corruption, pales in comparison to this cosmic scale. Her power is a shadow cast by the Mortis family's divine light, and her destruction is a necessary correction of her aberration. The Sun, in contrast, is an eternal constant. His escape from Mortis would mark the uncontainable dominance of darkness, a force that could never be destroyed.